So now we have a local agency panel.
All right, so my name's Jack Whitty. I'm part of the Pavement Preservation Board, the industry rep, and I'm with Corrective Asphalt Materials. So what we've put together here is a panel of local agencies, a few from Missouri. We have one special one that came all the way from Minnesota to present. I wore them down for weeks, months, and years to get them to do this. So please pay attention and learn from what they have to say. So we have a panel of engineers. They're all from local agencies, and what we're trying to do is the theme is how do they start their preservation programs. What I see a lot in the industry and local agencies is just the difficulty of getting these preservation programs started, and how do they sell these programs to local, to their commissioners, to their mayors, things like that. It's not focused on what they're doing, but how they're getting them started and how they're selling them. And first up, we have Trudy Elsner. Trudy is the program management engineer for Hennepin County Public Works in Minneapolis. So that's the county that envelops Minneapolis. She has been promoting pavement rehabilitation and preservation treatments to be included in her overall pavement management program since joining the county in 2015. Prior to working with the county, Trudy, a University of Illinois graduate, worked at Minnesota DOT Metro Maintenance, focusing on pavement preservation. So Trudy, can you come up and tell your story?
So you know who I am, okay? And I included this slide because I didn't know if everyone would know Hennepin County is in Minnesota, and if you know where Minneapolis is, you know where Hennepin County is. So I thought, just get us situated. And again, it was interesting when I pulled this up. I'm like, oh wow, we're kind of in the center of the partnership. So. Hennepin County has about 2,200 lane miles, 570 center line miles, and when about 60% is rural, urban, and 40% is rural. And so when I was asked how did we start, I kind of had to take a look back, and 90% of our pavement's asphalt. I know I have a new asset management division manager who would like to see a little more balance between concrete and asphalt, but at this point we're about 90% asphalt. So I'm only really referring to our asphalt pavements today and how we are doing preservation. And prior to 2018, our system just considered, you had your reconstruct projects, which were usually expansion, as you mentioned, a lot of times those are the nice shiny things that you want to do. And then thin mill and overlays we were using usually just 1.5 inches, thin mill and overlays and doing them over and over again, and then crack sealing. Now, prior to 2018, though, like back in the 1990s, we were using seal coats and chip seals, and so some of the pavements that we found that were in better shape had those seal coats, and we were finding that really had preserved a lot of the pavement. So as we were going forward, we looked at our lane miles of what we were doing for mill and overlays and our capital budget, and of course budgets are tight. And one of the things that happened for the county is we got a wheelage tax in 2014, so our lane miles were able to go up. But then by the time 2018 hit, we had the wheelage tax, but then they took away our property tax funding. So we ended up with a net zero gain. And so our lane miles were going down. And so one of the things we were looking at is I'm going to go back to that, is our overall pavement age, and same as throughout the country. Over 40% of our pavements are over 50 years old, another 9% are over 40 years old. So one of the problems we have is our reconstruct projects were only going about, no, that's going back the other way. Sorry, I had these out of order from when I sent it to Jack, so. When we were looking at our reconstructs, we looked at our average, and our average of reconstruct lane miles is under 25 lane miles a year. So if you take, of our 2,200 lane miles, 49% of that, and divide it out, we're looking at 43 years to reconstruct what needs to be reconstructed now. Pavements that were built in 50 years ago, unless you guys did something different, weren't meant to last 100 years. And so again, we were looking at that. So we had to look at how can we get this whole system moving in a better direction. And I think if you've been to any pavement preservation partnership meeting before, you've heard, keep the good roads in good condition, and the right road with the right treatment at the right time. So we also are asset management driven. Now, unlike expansion, one of the problems that I know we're facing now is we can get any project through. If it's a complete street, a bike trail, it reduces disparities, and it has some impact on the climate action plan. You know, nothing to do with my pavement necessarily, but all those other things that have to come into it. So, but again, we are trying to be data driven. So the data that we collect is basically our PCI, our PSI, our pavement serviceability rating, and then of course we look at our pavement history. So when we were looking at this age condition there, looking at what we're going to get reconstructed, knowing that our mill and overlay numbers are going down, we of course, here's a couple examples of our beautiful roads that were built in the 1950s. So I'm sure you guys all have similar looking roads. But we talked with our team and the capital side, and we were able to get a rehabilitation program set up. So we have the capital budget, and then we have the operating budget. Our mill and overlay and maintenance and preservation comes from our operating budget, and our reconstructs and now rehabilitation are coming out of our capital budget. We were able to get some bonding money, and so we did our first cold in place in 2019 and our first full depth in 2020, and we're trying to get to a point where we're doing 20 lane miles a year to keep this program going. In addition, we're trying to get the folks on the capital side to get more money for pavement reconstruction and not trails and complete streets and everything else. We know that's important, but again, as you'd mentioned with the Missouri system, you know, maintaining your assets is critical and hard to convince people, but I think that message has gone out. So. We then, at the same time, we were doing the crack sealing, doing mill and overlays, but we weren't using all the other tools in our tool belt. So for preservation, then we added Texas Underseal in 2018 was our first preservation project. I had worked with MnDOT before, and we had done a great project, which was the Texas Underseal. We really saw that it really was retarding that reflective cracking coming back through, and so we worked on this road, and you'll hear more about this on our local agency update. Then in 2020, we did our first, 2019, we did our first cold in place. 2020 then is when we actually added our microsurfacing and chip sealing. The chip sealing we added, it was just a nice convenient thing. We had some under seals in the program. You're already doing that chip seal. Let's just chip seal a few roads. So we got a chip seal program going that way. Then our microsurfacing program didn't really start as preservation. We had a road that was in the reconstruct. A project got delayed. Our project got delayed. We were waiting. It still isn't constructed, but we knew we were going to have to do something in this road, so we used a micro to glue the road together. So you can use preservation treatments, obviously, for more than true preservation, but we do like when we can get them on the road at the right time. 2021 continued with the same things and the same treatments. So now rather than just the mill and overlay and the crack seal, we have had our lane miles with our operating dollars and our preservation program, which you can see in the orange here going up with the chip seals, the micros, and the ultra thins, trying to do some of those. So in summary, our program changes were that we got the capital budget to get the rehabilitation projects put in, and then in the operating budget, we added the preservation projects. So, and in fact, now we have a new asset management division manager who used to be at MnDOT working in pavement, and definitely I've been very happy because it's been very easy to promote new projects there.
So next up, we have Ann Lamatola. Ann Lamatola is the Director of Public Works in the Building Department at Ladue, where she serves for 10 years. She has also held the position of intern mayor's liaison for the last year. I did not know that. That's kind of interesting. Prior to the year at Ladue, she served as the Public Works Director for Sunset Hills for 5 years, following 7 years with the City of St. Louis as a construction engineer working on the Forest Park Master Plan implementation. And as a 2000 civil engineering graduate at Missouri University of Science and Technology and a licensed professional engineer. Ann enjoys spending time with her family, which includes twin 16-year-old daughters who, as new drivers, appreciate well-preserved pavement. Thanks, Ann. Also, Ann is an avid Mets fan, which I just found out a few months ago. We're not too happy about that here in St. Louis, but we'll let it slide because she's on the panel. Thanks, Ann.
I can't help it. I married a New Yorker, so. So Jack mentioned my background, and my perspective is quite a bit different. MoDOT, I think, mentioned 34,000 miles, centerline miles of pavement, and Trudy mentioned, I think, 2,200 miles. I have 22 center line miles of pavement. So Ladue is in St. Louis County, and here in St. Louis County, there's about 90 municipalities. We are 8.5 square miles, though. We're really spread out, but just 22 centerline miles. But we have some roads that are carrying 21,000 ADT, so we do have some arterials and things that are very important to maintain. What's unique about Ladue, we do have 60 miles or so of private streets, so we have to work with trustees. A lot of what I do is advising our private subdivision HOAs or trustees that are responsible for maintaining those roads. So that's kind of an interesting caveat to my role. And Ladue is one of the wealthiest communities with very high expectations from our citizenry, and they want our money to be spent wisely. So I have been with Ladue for about 10 years, and what I inherited was what you can see on the screen. This was our pavement management program. Now, with only 22 miles of streets, you know, it was basically a typewritten listing of our roads, and it hadn't been updated really since the late 1970s. There was incomplete records. I started there in 12, so I had to really fill in some gaps as to what was occurring with our pavement between the late 70s and 2012. But when I had been at my last community, we had a pretty robust pavement management system. And so I was familiar. Now I had an assistant city engineer there that ran our pavement management. And at Ladue, at the time I was hired, I was the only engineer with Ladue. So I kind of drew on that experience and realized, you know what, we need to create our pavement management program. And I started out and just used basically the PASER rating system, the 10-point scale. It's very straightforward. I had experience with it, and it kept it pretty basic. So I had to basically inventory our assets, create the spreadsheet, rate our pavements, which I did. It's a pretty easy visual inspection. And then what I wanted to do was coincide with developing our asset management system through our GIS. We did not have GIS at the time. We just were relying on our St. Louis County GIS. So we did collect a bunch of data for other data layers, sidewalks, guardrails, signage, just all of the different components of our asset management system, and got that into GIS, which that helps sell the story with elected officials. So this is just kind of a screenshot of a portion of our pavement maintenance spreadsheet that I created. It's basically just got our street attributes and dimensions and things like that. It's got the information that I could find from hard copy records as to what kind of happened from between the late 70s and when I got there in 2012. So that information all got captured into the spreadsheet. And then on the far right side of the screen, you can see like color coded, which just helps for a visual of what are we going to do next, what year are we doing something, and it all coincides with our 10-year plan, which I'll show in a moment. So then after we kind of got the data together and into a spreadsheet, it was time to start selling the program, which is something that Jack wanted us to talk about since we really didn't have a program before. So it's really kind of 4 parts: educating, communicating, and then budgeting and forecasting, and then continuing to evaluate and tweak the program. So with educating, so the way that our city works, it's heavily relies upon our committees. We have a public works committee, we have a stormwater committee, we have a parks and beautification committee, and I have to report to all these different committees. So I started with our public works committee and just tried to explain to them how pavement maintenance works, how it's just much better to spend money up front, you know, before your pavements fall apart and decline to the point where you have to have very expensive reconstruction. And they're very savvy business leaders in our community, and you know, a lot of very intelligent members of on our city council, our mayor, and it wasn't too terribly hard to sell the program. But then also as we continued on, just communicating, this just helps in a lot of different ways. We use social media to communicate about what we're doing, our Public Works Department, our projects, Public Works Week. We send out mailers. We do, the bottom right screen is our website. We have project updates that we share information there. The top right is mailers. So we have to communicate and keep telling our story. And then here, the next part of selling the program, budget forecasting. This is very important. In our community, we have a lot of different committees, and our finance committee is very respected, and we have to sell all of our projects and everything we're doing with them. We are required to do a 10-year forecast. It's nice, I mean, it's always subject to change, but it does help us in our planning. Basically, our road maintenance is funded out of our road and bridge fund, which that comes from property taxes, which are allocated out from St. Louis County. And then a very small portion is also the gas tax. That has to fund sidewalks. It has to fund, ADA compliance for our sidewalks, traffic signals, salt for snow removal operations, pavement management as well. So it's important to have all of those things forecast out over the course of many years. And then we have to continue to tweak the program. So we have to try new things. Before I got to Ladue, we had not really done much besides chip seal, which wasn't heavily, or wasn't viewed very favorably at the time. We did kind of pivot, and we've tried things like NovaChip. We do a lot of micro. We do asphalt rejuvenators on our newer pavements to try to extend that life. And our pavement's looking really, really good. And our elected officials are happy. But we do continue to tweak. On the bottom, there's an image where we're trying some rejuvenator over our micro seal to see how that works. So having said that, that's all I had today, and I really appreciate being here. Thank you.
Next, we have Matt Malik. Matt Malik is the Public Works Director for the City of Clayton. Clayton is the county seat for St. Louis County. Matt spent the first 15 years of his career in engineering consulting and the last 7 years at the City of Clayton. He is a registered engineer at the state of Missouri and lives in St. Charles with his wife. He has 2 kids and a new dog that he doesn't want, apparently. Another interesting fact about Matt, he's an avid watch collector. So look out on his wrist. You might see something cool, something new that you've never seen before. Come on up, Matt.
Jack starts me off with some embarrassing facts. But yeah, the dog, anybody who's got a dog recently and has kids know that they lie, that they're going to take care of it. So we're going through that right now. I think as we were talking, the cities here, we've got Kirkwood, Ladue, and I'm from Clayton. We were arguing over who was going to go first because we're probably going to be a little duplicative in what you see, but we'll try to mix it up a little bit. As Jack mentioned, I'm the director for the city of Clayton. We are a small city, but we're crushing Ladue in centerline miles. We got at least 50% more at 32 or 33. So. But they're our neighbor to the west, and we work closely with them as paths intersect. But the city of Clayton is a established community. There's no expansion really room. It's been in place quite a while. So most of what we do is preservation of pavement. There's the 7 years I've been there, I don't think we've reconstructed anything but alleys. It's been all preservation of mostly asphalt pavement in our case. As I was asked to speak today, I had these instructions from Jack. So these are the 3 things that I'm going to try to hit on as we step through. So the how. I was fortunate enough that when I came to the city of Clayton, we had already established a pavement management program. In the late 90s, they had passed a bond issue, and they were coming out of that bond issue, just resurfaced all the streets, and trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do for the future maintenance? The chip seals weren't going over well in the city. We have a clientele that is highly educated like Ann's, but is also highly focused on aesthetics. And there was microsurfacings these days even I get so much pushback on. So at the time, they knew that funding wasn't going to be there to resurface these streets every less than 10 years or what have you, and that couldn't be the only solution. So in the late 90s, they were developing a plan, and in 2001, they put it before the board, and it was adopted. And we revised it a couple times since, but generally, it's pretty much stayed with the treatments you see up here. So a lot of asphalt streets. I think we've got 1 block remaining that's concrete in the city, except for our alleys, which are all concrete. But our general program follows a 21-year cycle at this point. It's year zero is where we do a mill and overlay traditionally, followed by a micro at 7 and 14, and then a mill and overlay again at 21. We've been looking at different options that I'll get into in a little bit to stretch that out, to not be in front of homes as much, to maybe cut a micro out of the mix, different things we can do to extend that pavement life. As I mentioned, the streets and alleys, mostly asphalt on the streets. Alleys are concrete, and those are, we expect 25 to 30 years, but we can get more. In our downtown area, it's highly commercial, and we get a lot of abuse from trash trucks, delivery trucks, and the sort. So we've got a pretty healthy alley section we use down there. Also part of the management plan is crack sealing. Every 2 years, we kind of divide east and west of the city. But keeping the water out of the base. We've got some old bases in a lot of areas, and old macadam rock underneath some of those too. But our general section of pavement is an 8-inch concrete with a 2-inch asphalt on top of it, if you look throughout the city. So while I say we have asphalt streets, that's just what you can see in a lot of cases. So it's a good base to start with, but they're very old pavements in a lot of cases. The how. So every other year we evaluate our pavements. We use Payzer as well to develop a rating system. Mostly we can utilize that for the alleys, and as well as to make sure that the asphalt streets are tracking as intended. We're not seeing any big issues pop up. We operate on a 5-year capital plan, but we project out, the spreadsheet I'll show you in the next slide, we project out roughly 20 years on the treatments. And then subdivisions are historically performed at once. Again, this goes back to the aesthetic and the elected officials wanting to not have one street complain while the other street was getting new pavement, I think. We're looking at ways to get away from that, to use funds better, but part of that is just getting data collected so we can make those data-driven decisions in the future. For the foreseeable future, though, I think we're going to remain a subdivision at once. Now, this does limit the impact to the residents. And then the map you see on the screen is our 5-year plan that we share out. Not really pavement preservation, but it ties into it in a way. We coordinate with utility companies every year, and about October through November, I update this GIS map online, and I make the layers available for download to the agencies so that all the utilities can see what we have planned, so they can get in before us and do their work is hopefully the idea. Eliminate those trench cuts because we do have a pavement degradation ordinance in place, so they're interested in this information usually. Busy spreadsheet, but this is an outlook on our residential streets, our arterials, and then down at the bottom were parking lots that nobody wanted to account for until I came to the city and realized that's a lot of pavement area out there that we had. We've sold some of them off, but there's some that haven't had treatment in years that we've started to account for. But this is the basic tool we use each year for developing the CIP. We do have many other assets we maintain at the city, so we do have cartograph that we utilize for asset management as well. We have a large forestry division, traffic signals. We use it for pavement maintenance, or excuse me, pavement preservation. But it's not a necessity. Spreadsheets work just fine, especially a city our sizes. This is a tool that just for pavement would be overkill, but it's handy to have, and it can make some nice graphics to sell. So I think I've covered this. These are kind of the different tools in our toolbox at present. Mill and overlay. Usually we're doing a 2 to 3 inch with some correction on the milling. Microsurfacing, we'll do double lifts on our arterial streets, 2 15-pound lifts instead of 118. U-balls we've used with limited areas. We're still evaluating that. I think the last install we had was in 2017. I would recommend against trying to do a traffic circle in a highly urban area with a spray paver, but they pulled it off. Alley replacements, that's our section there. And then the recent additions that we've been experimenting with, and we're seeing some good success, is the rejuvenators and the fibers. We've used the fiber on our microsurfacings, and then we've used rejuvenator now on a good number of projects, and we try to hit those year 0, year 1, We've just hit our second installation at year 5 on some pavement we did in 2017. We hit this year. It's performing well. We're thinking we're going to be able to push that micro out at least from year 7 to year 10, and then we're going to continue to evaluate it with the pavement ratings from there. But we're either going to do that micro at 10 or beyond, see if it's suitable for another micro. So we're either saving money on not doing the micro or by pushing out that mill and fill is the idea. The why, obviously everybody in here knows about preserving the pavement, extending life, and the budgets, but also on the budget side, having a pavement preservation program like this helps normalize the budget. It gives you a better idea of, you can tell your bosses what to expect, 10 plus years out for the budget. And we'll have the occasional things that come up, but it makes a good tool for that. Grants, whenever we go to apply for different grants, if we're able to show we're part of a management plan, it seems to carry more weight, and it can even get you more points in certain areas. Utility coordination, I mentioned the map that we shared through GIS up there. It helps having this plan. We're able to communicate out to them where we're going to be in 5 years or further. It's transparency for the residents. They know what to expect, which is key. It's not that you don't get accused of playing favorites with certain streets. This was our plan, and we told you about this many years ago. The elected official buy-in, if you can develop a plan like that and show that it's going to save money, it also gives them something to point to in case that resident comes knocking on their door, that, look, it's part of a plan. And as I mentioned it with the grants, it ties into grants and budgeting, but I said the power of having a plan. If you write the plan, it can be 2-3 pages. It can be well developed over those pages. It doesn't have to be a whole lot. But if the fact that you can point back to a plan carries a lot of weight when we go into budgeting season. It carries a lot of weight with my new city manager when I talk to him, who's big on preserving what we got rather than, as Ed mentioned, building the new shiny thing. Being able to point to a plan, now people don't always get into where that plan came from, how it's developed, but to point to a plan is a powerful thing. And then how we sold it, this is the part where I have to draw on the experience of the people at my agency, because it was sold long before I was there. But it all comes down usually to dollars. If it's going to work with dollars, the people are going to bite. And the one thing that I think the elected officials don't always realize is the roadways are some of the largest assets that any community has. To get a cost for those and to know that those are your assets if they went away tomorrow, what it would take to replace them, that is a substantial cost. Developing an inventory so that you can identify those costs and estimate the maintenance costs, those are important steps. Building scenarios, we did it with evaluating the rejuvenators and the fibers of how much we're expecting to save, just so you can show those scenarios to your elected officials. And also it's treatment versus treatment, but also treatment versus no treatment. What's that going to lead to? And the graph that you can see in the bottom left is just kind of your typical pavement degradation curve that shows some of those interim measures that preventative maintenance that's introduced at those different intervals. That's a picture that if you can't get people to read, so a picture like that is, I'm jumping ahead in my points here, but keep it simple, and adding pictures is a good way to sell. They'll capture that. That's something that also going to be put and shared out to residents. Having that inventory allows you to develop those annualized costs. We look at it over the full life cycle, but the annualized cost is really when we're talking budgets each year to share with the board. If we do X versus Y, it's going to save $130,000 on our pavements per year. They don't care as much about, $1.3 million over the next 20 years. But if you talk each year, they're usually looking at the budget on an annual basis. So I think it helps break it down that way. The plan also, as I mentioned, helps the public to know what they expect. We can share also when we're selling it, if we do this plan, we expect our PASER scores to stay at this level, or a percentage of them to be at this level. And as you're developing the plan, if you don't have one already, I would encourage it, but borrow from others. Don't feel like you have to create it. It doesn't have to be complex. I think whether we're writing ordinances, plans, traffic calming, I know I stole from Chris, who's talking next, people put a lot of work in out there already, so feel free to, borrow from others, make it fit your community. But just having a plan, I think overall, regardless of the detail, it can evolve, but having a plan to start with is an important thing to have.
All right, next up, we have Chris Kruger. Chris Kruger is the city engineer for the city of Kirkwood, which is also in St. Louis County and around the cities that just talked. And it's, again, a suburb of St. Louis. He holds a bachelor's of engineering degree from Missouri S&T and an MBA from St. Louis University. Chris, I did not know that about you. I did not. He is a professional engineer in the state of Missouri. He manages the engineering department for the city of Kirkwood, which oversees the street capital improvement program that includes pavement preservation, engineering development review, and inspections, and also traffic signals.
I'm here to tell you a little bit about Kirkwood's pavement preservation plan. Tell you a little bit about Kirkwood. Actually, I started my career at Clayton, was there for 5 years, worked for another municipality for 5 years after that, and now I'm at City of Kirkwood. So not only have I stole stuff from City of Clayton, we're all guilty of it. So Kirkwood itself, we maintain 150 center lane miles. About 30% of that is concrete, 70% of that is asphalt. So the majority of the work we do is asphalt. However, we do concrete replacement every single year, as well as pavement preservation projects. We've got around 20,000 residents. So Kirkwood was established in 1853, so we're a very old city, however, and there's an historic charm to downtown Kirkwood. We've got an Amtrak station that it is the third busiest train station in Missouri. And so that's kind of what we're known for in Kirkwood. So back about 20 years ago, so I'm told, I've been with Kirkwood for 3 years, so 20 years ago, they did a lot of chip seals. They actually did it in-house with their street department. They had their own spreaders. And I think in general, residents, elected officials were happy with their road system. Staff turned over and they started to take street maintenance out of the street department. Our street department actually trimmed trees 10 years ago, and that's all they did. They did not care for our roads. So that left us with a road system that was failing. So about 5 years ago, City of Kirkwood went to a plan to basically hire out all of our tree trimming to contractors, brought street maintenance in-house. We did a pavement inventory, pavement management system, or pavement system study, and really get a PCI rating of what our city stands at 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, we were in a pretty bad situation. The former regime, I would say, did a lot of reconstruction in concrete, whether it was it was needed a full reconstruction or not. So that's really where the pavement management and pavement preservation started about 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, we started our pavement management. And so since that point, we sold it to our council to say, if we maintain our roads and maintain our, maintain what we have, we will actually get to a point where we can physically be able to maintain our roads. In the last 5 years, we've made significant progress in that. We have had to do some major reconstructions because of of things 10, 20 years ago. But we have definitely improved our road system over the past 5 years. We continue to do pavement preservation as far as rejuvenator. Typically, we'll do that in years 1 and year 5. That is something that we just started, so we're just getting to those 5-year streets. We do U-Bahs, and it's probably about a 50-50 mix of U-Bahs and mill and overlays within our asphalt program. So we have quite a bit of a big contract with U-Bahs, and we've had great success with that, with increasing the ride surface. One of the other big things in Kirkwood is we have a lot of tear down rebuilds, and the amount of tear down rebuilds ends up with water services and sewer destroys that make cuts in the pavement. So just about every block in the city of Kirkwood has a tear down rebuild. So we're constantly battling that. So what we can do is these small or lower cost overlays really help us out. So we also do, street reconstructions with both asphalt and concrete. So, that's really what I have put together.
Next, we have Eric Landwehr. Eric has been the Director of Public Works, the Director, right? Okay, just making sure. I said something else and he got mad at me. Anyhow, the Director of Public Works for Cole County since 2020. Prior to that, he was the county engineer for Cole County for 15 years. He graduated from University of Missouri-Rolla in 1996 and worked at MoDOT as a highway designer for 9 years prior to going to Cole County. He has spent the past several years learning about and developing a pavement preservation for Cole County. And also, an interesting fact about Eric. Eric lives in Jeff City. Jeff City is the capital of Missouri, and Cole County envelops Jefferson City. He lives in a haunted house that I will not go within 20 miles of, because I feel like I'll be on the episode of a Travel Channel with Eric. But here you go, Eric Landwehr.
Jack, I knew you were going to say something about me. I had no idea it would be my haunted house that I live in. So you definitely stumped me there. I almost couldn't do this today. Seriously. No, not somewhat seriously. My wife and I, we teach a marriage preparation course for the Catholic Diocese in Jefferson City. And so, no joke, Saturday I'm sitting in front of a group of couples and trying to teach them about marriage and what to look forward to and all the great things. And so mentally, I almost couldn't put myself into going from that very positive, very uplifting, and just really really nice time to talk about pavement preservation. I almost just couldn't do it because you can't get much more mundane than pavement preservation, right? Oh, sorry. No, it's pavement preservation. It's been for us in Cole County a journey, really. You go back to the days, I would say, or mid-2000s, 2005, 6, 7 or so, asphalt was cheap. That was our pavement preservation. We just laid asphalt. We laid a ton of it, no pun intended, because we could get it, and that's just what you did. And really, pavement preservation didn't really become a thing for us until maybe 2008 or 9 when prices really started to escalate. Unfortunately, we were behind the curve. We did not react quick enough to that. And we're kind of paying for it today. However, we've built a program, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But yeah, happy to be here. Get back in, go from my marriage training to my, what I do in engineering and pavement preservation. So again, I'm the Public Works Director for Cole County. I've been there not quite 2 years, but I've been at Cole County for 17 years. Watched what my predecessor did and worked with our maintenance staff all throughout that time and learning and trying to build what our program is today. We still have work to do, but we have a good foundation for where we're going. Cole County, it is the center, it's the capital county of Missouri. Jefferson City is within our county, headquarters of MoDOT. So we're front and center to a lot of things going on in the state. Some states may be different in how the maintenance is done as far as counties and cities and whatnot. We have, Jefferson City is our biggest municipality. There's also 7 small communities. We do not maintain any of their infrastructure. We only maintain the unincorporated parts of the county. So the grayed area is what we take care of. The yellow is the cities, the bigger and then the smaller cities. We have 475 miles, total miles, centerline miles of roadway, 325 paved and 151 gravel. So we are, you get outside the more urbanized areas, we are pretty rural. Of those paved, we have 285 miles that are asphalt, 17 miles of concrete, and then 22 miles of chip seal, and that is a pavement that never had hot mix or any kind of asphalt mix below it. It's just a chip seal laid on aggregate base. And we break our pavement preservation really into two parts. So you have your pavement preservation program that has various levels of action. And I like to go back to the beginnings, and really this sets the stage for having a good preservation program for your pavements. You have to build them right to begin with. We see a lot of counties in the states, especially some rural ones, that just want to get something paved, and so they'll just lay asphalt on what's there, or maybe chip what's there, do very minimal prep work, minimal ditches. You got to build them right in the first place. If you do that, you'll find that you'll be able to maintain pavements in good condition for a much longer time and not have to do a lot of repair work when you go in and do some treatments. You also have your routine maintenance, and these are the items that are the weekly, monthly, yearly type of things that help keep the pavements in good condition. I see a lot of, even on some of our pavements, our ditches get filled in or they're just not draining very well. And any ditch that holds water is going to be, you're going to have a pavement that the subgrade is saturated. So those are issues. Tree trimming, we do that. And any tree that overhangs a pavement, brush, cast shadow or shade on that pavement, it doesn't dry out as quick, and that's where we see a lot of our pavement failures. Preventative maintenance is kind of the really early items as far as preservation goes, the rejuvenators, the crack sealing, different types of seals, chip seals, and microsurfacing. And then you get into your pavement rehabilitation and overlays. The way we look at it, that's kind of a crossover. It can kind of be preventative, but it can also be rehabilitation. And then you have your mill and fills and your pavement replacement. And to have a good preservation program, you have to have a good management program. And components of that is building good public support base, building your pavement condition rating system, developing an asset management program. And we, about a year and a half ago, purchased Cartograph. I know Matt had talked about using that. We've been developing that, and that's been very good for us, not only just for managing all of our assets, but we also utilize the pavement life forecasting system. We've gone to using that, and that's been beneficial for us as far as making determinations on what to do on our pavements. And then having trained and experienced people making the decisions. That is, when you look at everything across the board, that is probably the most important thing for us. We have to have good people that have been around for a while, have that institutional knowledge of our pavements. You know, every municipality, every entity, pavements have been done differently. You know, there's not a lot of consistency across the board, and so having people that have been around that know how pavements have been, what's been done in the past, that's been very beneficial. And then in developing and training our staff, we utilize a lot of different assets through the different associations in the state, interactions with people through American Public Works Association, which we're involved with, and have a lot of good contacts there. And then with the contractors and vendors, and just an all-around builds a good educational base for our employees. Our citizens expect this: nicely paved roads or nicely treated roads. They get upset at things like this. And as I was coming in today, I experienced something like this on the road just outside coming in. And it's things like that we get calls from our citizens routinely about when their pavements aren't in good condition. There's nothing worse, and I experience it whenever I go home every day and leave to go to work every day. The road I drive on has the same pothole that I hit every single time. And things like that really, I mean, over time, that can really irritate people and build a sentiment of just, it kind of builds up some anxiety amongst citizens when they see the same thing happen and not being taken care of. So those are the things that we want to try, and through our program, try to avoid having. And, having the good citizen base builds our support. I like this quote from Warren Buffett. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently. As public works leaders, we have an enormous responsibility to provide for our community, and we must be accountable to our citizens and our partners. And a few years of poor pavement management can take several years to recover from, both in the physical aspect of the pavements and then support from the public. So it's very important that we take this seriously and do a good job and build this system and carry it on. Don't let it falter. So I wanted to hit on, there's a lot of technical stuff with the pavement preservation. I just wanted to hit on building the public support, and that's what we focused on. You know, all of us in the room know how to do this stuff. There's different ways to preserve pavements, and that's what you all are here for today and the next few days. But if you don't have the public support base, it's going to be difficult getting to that point. So the three key areas that we've kind of looked at is news media, interactions with elected officials, in our case a county commission, you'll have your city council, you'll have state representatives if you're a state entity, and then regular contact with the citizens through social media, communications with, in our case, residential areas, homeowners associations, and then just meeting with residents. Now, having a good base takes years to develop. Cole County back in 1986 passed a half-cent sales tax for capital improvements, and we've built upon that ever since. This is what you see on the screen is a copy of the brochure that we give out, and in that brochure we list what we've done in the past 5-year period. It's a 5-year sunset. We list what we've done in the past 5-year period and what we plan to do in the next 5 years. And fulfilling you know, doing what you said you were going to do and going to the public asking for them to pass an extension of the sales tax is always a good thing. And because of our commitment to doing what we said, the past at least 3 that I've been involved in have passed upwards of 80% every time, which in this day and age can be you know, a little hard to get when you're talking about sales taxes for capital improvements in roads. You don't see that high percentage that much. But we're you know, it's a smaller community, and Public Works is one of those things that, you know, people, when they think of the county, they think of Public Works. They think of their grader operator, their boom mower operator, the guys out on the road. Our county commission, a lot of what gets them elected is the Public Works Department, having good roads. That's probably 90% of the calls that they get are something related to the road, sometimes bad, sometimes good. But that's a good base. We've developed this. It's been over 35 years in the making. And again, we just passed it this last year, almost 80% in support. And because of that, and having this good program for funding, we've been able to increase our preservation budget by 75% since 2012. So using the news media, this topic here isn't specifically road. It's about getting a new public works facility, and I guess you could take that a step further. That's going to take a good public support base to go to that extent to build a new facility. That is something we're working on. But the news media, in our case, Cole County, the local newspaper in Jefferson City has a reporter that's dedicated just to Cole County. He does other things as well, but we always have somebody covering county business. They come to every county commission meeting. You can utilize the news media to run stories on public works projects all the time. They're always looking for things to talk about. Jefferson City, like I said, it's a pretty close-knit, small community, and generally a lot of positive things that the newspaper runs, and they'll always talk about things that we're doing. So utilizing them to help tell our story has been important for the process that we've been going through. Don't shy away from the media. They are our friends. I was told that whenever I first started at the county, the previous director that had left to go to another job, that's how I ended up getting there as county engineer. I talked to him a couple weeks after I started, and he said, always look at the media as your friend. They can make or break you. In our case, you know, they've been able to provide good content for our citizens and help tell our story. Presenting items to the elected officials. This is actually a copy of a presentation that I did last year when we were in the, now, like I said, we've been building our pavement preservation program for quite a while, but we really didn't get into making a serious effort through using cartograph until recently. Gave this presentation, showed them the pavement life curve. Whether they understood it or whatnot was another thing, but just continually having discussions with the elected officials, it builds that support. Even just, little things, always talking about your pavement preservation program, why you're doing what you're doing in front of the county commission is good. And again, the newspaper's always there, and so they'll pick up those stories and run with them. Facebook, we started doing this about a year ago, and I was kind of surprised how much of a reach you have with that. And this is one of our posts that we did this past summer. And in this particular case, we were doing some dig outs in preparation work for the chip seal that was going to be placed on this road. And just an explanation, and you don't have to get too technical with it, but just a picture with a few words usually captures people's attention. And in a post like this, you can go back and check to see what reach it had, and you'll see like 4,000 people this has reached out to. Even if you just catch a few here and there, at least you're planting the seed in their mind why you're doing what you're doing, and it'll go a long way to building that support. Another post, we actually put this on Facebook too, the pavement preservation, or the pavement life curve. Of course, that's nothing that, it's really fascinating and people aren't going to pay that much attention to it. However, I checked one of the comments on this one, and this was just explaining why we're doing what we're doing and how it's important to preserve things and not let it go. I caught one, and again, I said, Cole County just is the unincorporated parts of the county, what we take care of. Jefferson City has their own things, and one of the posts was, I wish Jefferson City would do something like this. So nothing derogatory against them, but they have a lot more pavement to have to take care of and a lot more visual, people looking at it daily, and a lot more potholes, unfortunately. And at least it told us, we're doing something good, and maybe, what we're doing will reach out and more people will see it. Simple emails and conversations with the citizens is good. In this case, we have a homeowner association out in a pretty large residential subdivision, and the roads all need to be overlaid. But we can't just go in and overlay without taking care of all the other things associated with it. Stormwater, underground, stormwater infrastructure, curb and gutter that's in poor condition. We always fix those things first before we go in and do a big overlay in a subdivision. And having that conversation with the citizens and letting them know this is why we're doing, we can't do it this year even though it needs it. We're going to have to limp it along a little bit, but we got to get all these other things taken care of before we put that asphalt down. There's nothing that looks worse than going back and seeing a pavement cut where you had to replace a pipe, 2 or 3 years after you did an overlay. And that goes back to what I said earlier, that pothole that you hit every time you go home, it really bothers you over time. So we don't want to have any of those situations. So letting people know why we're doing what we're doing usually gets their support. And in this case, the president of the association said he would take that back to the residents. And I asked him, I said, do you need me? I could even come to a meeting and talk about it. He said, no, everything you got in here is fine. This will cover it. So that kind of thing, and just regular contact is a good deal. And in this particular case, we did some boxing on the pavement. It was in pretty rough shape, and even just a little interim repair, even though it's not what you want to do, it's better than doing nothing at all. And it kind of lets the citizens know that, hey, we understand where you're at. We can't do it right now, but we're going to Band-Aid it along enough and keep it in as good a condition as we can until we can do the full upgrade on it. Never pass an opportunity to meet with citizens to discuss and explain why we do what we do. This is invaluable to building an understanding of our program, which adds to the public support. And our citizens are our friends, and we need to treat them as such. And look for ways to brand your program. This is the sales tax that we do. It's always Proposition A on the ballot. And this last go around, the chairperson of the campaign, he was the marketing, or is the marketing director for one of the local banks. And he helped us kind of come up with this it's actually a sign that we put up on a road project that we just completed, and we'll do that on one of our big overlays that we did this year. This will now be, for years to come, that image that people are going to see when they see Cole County Public Works and the improvements that we're making. So building that and getting people to understand that goes a long way to building that public support. So, and having that public support base will lead to having a good pavement preservation program if you utilize the tools that you have in your toolbox for making the right decisions.
Well, thank you, guys. This is hopefully really informative. Something different. Maybe we can take you all on the road and go to all the other pavement preservation partnerships. But yeah, we'll open up to some questions.
Hi. I enjoyed your comment about getting the media on your side, but I think that people here would find that the larger the metropolitan area, the bigger the daily newspaper, the harder it's going to be to get good publicity. You're really well served by the smaller circulation publications. You know, let's face it, in a lot of these places, there isn't that much news. And they jump. The weeklies, the dailies, and the twice weeklies in those areas will jump at the opportunity to get an article that's favorable to pavement preservation, and they really, really like when a new process is being used. Now, maybe you're reluctant to get exposure for a new process because what if it doesn't work? But that being said, they are suckers for stories, and it's a big mistake not to pay attention to them.
I'd agree. The smaller areas that have a local newspaper, definitely it's easy to get them on your side. You have to work at it and you have to give them content, but they'll usually run favorable things. When you get into the bigger, the bigger like the St. Louis newspapers, Kansas City, it's easy to get negative with some of those, media markets. And MoDOT in particular, they're, the funding crisis or the funding issues that they've gone through and the gas tax and everything, sometimes you can get some negative press there. But generally, I've found that, just get them good content. And in fact, when in Missouri, they passed a gas tax increase a little over a year ago. It's in effect, and there was a little bit of a push in the legislature to repeal that this past session. And I took it to heart because the counties get some of that too, and it will increase our budget by almost $750,000 when it's fully implemented in 5 years. And so I just sent a little blurb to our local reporter, and I said, "Here, this might be a little story here. I don't think the legislature understands the fact that the counties and cities get this money too. It's not just MoDOT." And they took that and ran a full-page article in the local newspaper, and actually. I was quoted in there, and so was Patrick McKenna, the director of MoDOT, was quoted in there. And it was a positive article, and it stressed the importance of why this money's needed for pavement preservation long term. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. It's good to utilize the media because they can run good things and have good press about what we're doing.
I just wanted to say that was critical because you're in the state capitol, and the newspaper probably is read by many, many legislatures. Also, don't ignore the opportunity to get TV coverage, too, of a application. Again, there's not that much news out there, and you're offering it to them on a silver platter.
Hennepin County, what's the population? 3 million. So we got from 3 million all the way down to 20,000. So we got a pretty good representation of different types of programs. I know Clayton, for example, is kind of a mini downtown St. Louis. It's another skyline in St. Louis area. And you're about 50,000?
During the day, 40 to 50.
Yeah.
Nighttime population about 16,000.
Yeah. What's Ladue?
8,500
So
people, so we're small.
And Kirkwood?
20,000.
And what actually is Cole County?
It's about 80,000. 40 is Jefferson City, and then the rest is the small communities and then the unincorporated.
And you mentioned there's like 90 cities or municipalities in St. Louis County. And there's 3 of you that are representing the 90 here. How do we get the other public works directors, whether it be in St. Louis County or across the state or other states, how do we get them to see the big picture of pavement preservation? Because it always feels like you're almost pushing a rope to get people to understand it?
I think an effective tool, at least in the state of Missouri, we're all members of American Public Works Association, so is Jack, so are you. So that is a way that we can network and share information and have educational sessions on pavement preservation and different, related topics. So that's been a really effective tool. Eric's a past president. I'm a past president of that. So, in Missouri, we have about 600 members in APWA. The Minnesota chapter is huge. I don't know if you're involved with that.
I am involved in that, but I think more importantly for us, for Hennepin County, we've reached out to some of the counties to talk about specific projects they've done or specific project types they've done. The other thing that's really helped with Carver County is one of our former Hennepin County engineers just went over there. So about 6 months ago, he called and said, I need to know what you guys are doing on pavement. Let me get my team together. And we had a really good conversation about what they're doing and how similar things are or aren't. But I think a lot of times, whether it's APWA or just your own personal network, just reaching out and talking to people, it's the networking, finding out what other people are doing and promoting it, to that. I also know in Hennepin County, in the area, through the Metro District, there's different meetings. And we've been trying to get even a group together for the more routine maintenance, the snow and ice and those kind of things, that we've been trying to get groups together that way too.
Does anyone know if the universities that teach civil engineering, are they talking about pavement preservation in their curriculum?
Tim, we just talked about this.
So
Go ahead,
just
Laura,
a few
go.
things. I'm probably the most recent grad here. I knew nothing about pavement preservation upon graduation, so the answer to that is no.
Until now. I can tell you that the International Slurry Surfacing Association is working hand in hand with Dr. Andrew Brand with the University of Arkansas in developing curriculum. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. That curriculum is going to be put into place, and he's going to start teaching that at the University of Arkansas. During this process, we did a survey and sent some information out to many other universities to ask if there would be some interest in using this curriculum, and we got an overwhelmingly positive response. So it's coming down the pike. It's there, and be my guest before the end of the year, Dr. Bram's going to have it in front of his students at University of Arkansas.
So I believe, I feel like sometimes the states are a little bit later to the game as opposed to the local agencies when it comes to trying new products and new innovations. One of the things that the states are really kind of trying to grasp and get their hands on is rejuvenators. And I know a lot of the local agencies in Illinois, and it sounds like you guys have been using rejuvenators to a higher frequency than what we are allowed to in the state. What's been your experience? Is it, are you guys having to apply every so often, every couple of years? Do you see a great benefit in your pavement conditions after so many applications, and what's the life cycle extension that you guys are seeing?
We've been using rejuvenators for the past couple of years. We actually do a test section on a street that we untreat, maybe a 10 by 20 area, and then basically what we see mainly is oxidation is not as great in that area. So we've only been doing it for a couple of years, but we've seen success out of it.
We've been using Rejuvenator since 2017, and we're just hitting some streets for the second time now. So again, limited exposure, but we've done similar test sections. Lots of good A/B comparison. Those photos can be powerful later to utilize. Since we do a crack sealing program every other year, it's easy to drive through those subdivisions 2-3 years into applying the Rejuvenator, and you can see how much less of the crack fill material you have down. It keeps that flexibility, especially with those wrap pavements that maybe don't have as much of it out of the gate. So far, our experience has been good.
We have also been using an asphalt rejuvenator since 2016, or actually no, 2015. And I also use that at a past agency. So we do test sections, try to just communicate to the elected officials, explain that it extends the lifetime of the pavement. And we have found that we've been able to push off micro. So we do micro, like we'll mill and overlay, and then at plus 7 years, which is what Clayton does too. We're typically applying a micro servicing, but we have been able to kind of extend it past that by a couple years even, if we're using the reclamite. We also do crack seal annually. Again, only 22 miles of road, but so I got to keep my guys busy, got to keep them out there and crack seal every year. And you're thinking about doing Rejuvenator, you mentioned.
We've been doing it since about 2014, and just a few things to add. We don't really have an empirical way to track it yet because we're so early in our asset management program. Just my personal thought is it's probably adding about 5 years to the life. And then one thing I like about it is you're not adding a surface to your driving surface. It's a penetrating sealer, and that's not something that can get worn off with plowing snow during the winter. We have a pretty aggressive snow plow, program during the winter. So it's something that you're just rejuvenating what's there, and you're not adding a surface that can wear off or do whatever. So that's the benefit that we're seeing from that.
I had a question for the panelist. You're seeing a 5-year increase. Is that with one application or 2-year applications?
As of now, we're just doing one application. It's year 2 of the pavement, after the year after it's laid. We have not done a follow-up. And again, we're still kind of new in all this. We probably will look at doing that on certain pavements. It kind of goes back a little bit to the initial payment that goes down. We all know with asphalt, you can get a good mix, you can get a bad mix. You can test it and do all that, but at the end of the day, some things are just going to be right, and you'll have a good mix that lasts for a long time, and some aren't. So I think we'll get into that with our program in the future, doing it like in a 5-year interval or something.
I'd like to follow up to what Tim had said. We at Pavement Preservation Journal do a profile of graduate students in pavement preservation in every issue. And Andrew Braham at Arkansas has been very instrumental in that, but it goes way beyond University of Arkansas. And it runs every issue, profiles and preservation. And if you're not now receiving Pavement Preservation Journal, I invite you to leave your email address with us, and we'll send you a link to subscribe at no charge.
Phil, you got a comment?
It wouldn't be a meeting if I wasn't talking. So what an opportunity we have today. We talked a little bit earlier. I'm calling on you two. We've had our stuff down on Route V in St. Charles County with your stuff as well. It's been down since about 2012. But there's an opportunity to kind of bring what we're doing today to a head. I'm going to call on my friends Joel from Minnesota and Jerry. We have an NRRA, National Research Alliance. MoDOT's part of it. And we currently have a study going on that perhaps you two could talk to those two and see what they're seeing after we have a true full-blown study on rejuvenators in general. That's more of a comment than anything else, Jack. Thank you.
I know when you start talking about preservation to your local communities and whatnot, you get a lot of pushback, and there's probably a lot of negative comments and stuff, but I don't want to know about that. What I want to know is, can you share with us one positive comment and how it helped you, that you got from not a constituent or anything, but from the powers to be that you had to go out and prove to them that this works?
One of our councilmen, so in the city of Ladue, we have a mayor, and then we have 6 councilmen, and one of them consistently tells me how great our pavement looks. I mean, micro does look really, really good. It turns it black, it stays pretty dark. So our residents love that. But he tells me all the time. Now, I know you said don't say anything negative, but he goes, but we're done. Oh, all the roads look good, so we're done. We're done with all our pavements. And so then it goes back to the education of that we have to keep allocating money, we have to keep crack sealing, we have to keep working on our treatments and budgeting accordingly. So it's a good and a bad, but ended on a good. I have another one though. Another elected official. Now he's a developer, and then he gets kind of sold on things like, well, let's just do like, regular driveway sealer. Like, can't we just do MAC 52 and put that on all of our roads and things like that? So then it goes back to, educating and everything and starting that cycle again. So I think, like a lot of us have said, you have to keep communicating and, keep using social media and all those things. And I think that's kind of a change for a lot of the communities, but as our residents are getting, younger and younger and using different forms of communication, you have to keep kind of looking at that. And I think most of these other cities have a communications person even that helps with that. We're looking at that or assigning that to someone to try to help communicate about what we're doing.
Kind of on the peripheral of that, and kind of to Brett's question earlier, we have a sustainability advisory committee that Public Works and myself are liaisons to, and so a lot of times we get questions from those members or from our elected officials that serve on that committee about sustainability of the pavements and different things. So that's an opportunity where we have to share that information, and it's those kind of places like it's like us trying to reach out to residents. As Brett's question was, how do we get those people involved? You got to go to where they're at. We don't just use our website. We go, Nextdoor, Facebook, different things. So it could be like those sustainability committees at different cities or whatever those committees might be, getting the information out, coming to ask to speak at one of those and share, what a plan would look like and how that could help even the sustainability efforts or, cater it to your audience. But we get a lot of opportunity to share from that committee.
I would just say in Kirkwood, we've got a long way to go in educating our residents and educating actually our council too. However, they for the majority, they have bought off on it. But they like a new concrete street. That's kind of where some of them are at. That's just what they would like to do. But educating how we can efficiently spend the dollars is what we need to do.
We're pretty fortunate, excuse me, we're pretty fortunate in Cole County to have, I have 3 county commissioners, a presiding and then a Eastern and Western District commissioner. They're both very, I would say, hands-off. They let us do our job. They don't get in the middle of us doing that. That's why they hire me as the director and have us to manage it. However, they're well-known in the community, and as much as we try to get people, if you got a question or whatever, just come to us. No, they like to talk to their county commissioner. That's just what they do. And there was a situation where we were it was actually Cole County had its bicentennial celebration, 200-year deal. It was a year and a half ago or so, and we had a celebration or whatever, and then ended up at the local brewery. Okay. I was there, and our county commissioners were there, and it was just a little celebration, not real big. And one of them comes up and said, "Hey, Eric, you need to go talk to this lady over here. She's got a question about our road." And I go over, and she said where it was, Grand Point Drive, and she goes, "When's that going to be overlaid? That thing's in rough shape." And I'm like, "I'm going to be your best friend today. We're actually doing that this coming summer." And so, like I said, they'll go to their county commissioner, and when you can tell the person, go back to the person, give them the feedback that, hey, we're going to do your road, it's coming up this year or in the next few years, or we have a plan, that looks good upon us, and it looks good upon the county commission or the county commissioner, and it helps, like I said earlier, it helps build that positive, that feedback from the citizens. So it's always nice to be able to tell somebody, give them the answer that they got to us through the county commission.
We have 7 different county commissioners, and unfortunately, I can't think of a time that we've had a positive come in about the roads. But we did have a really good success with a resident. Again, same thing happened. When are you going to do something? And it was the one that was getting paid next week. That was even better. But then again, you mentioned the communications, and we do have a communications team. And the good news is we have consistency now, as opposed to each project manager answering the public. We have the communications team answering, and I think that's been really helpful to get a consistent message out. And the communications people are not engineers, so they speak for the people, and I think that's worked well as well.
Thanks. I'll tell a real quick story. I had a county that I deal with all the time, and they haven't done a lot, but last year they decided to do some chip seal and a few other things, some rejuvenating stuff. And so I was talking to the maintenance superintendent, and I said, "So what kind of positive or negative comments have you gotten back from the commission?" And he said, "Oh, John Davis, the commissioner, said, great, we did that, and now we don't ever have to do it again." And I said, well, you go back and you tell him that now that he changes the oil in his truck, he never has to do that again. And he looked at me dead in the eye and he said, that's probably not a good analogy because last week his truck blew up because he didn't change the oil in it.
Being a citizen that lives near Ann's city, Ann received a real gift. She did a microsurfacing project, and the center lane divided municipalities. So Ann does pavement preservation on her side. The other municipality did nothing. And as a resident there, all of my friends and neighbors and everyone said to me, what in the world is going on with this other city? Ladue their roads look beautiful, and we have this yellow line, and the other municipality did nothing. And so there's a lot that goes on that you may not be aware of, but people are noticing and they're talking. And it may not filter all the way to your office, but they do know, and they appreciate it.
Except for the ones that call from that other community. And it went all over their social media and amongst their councilmen, and they're upset with us that we didn't get their side of the street microed. And it's tough because that city, they don't crack seal. I mean, it all got milled and overlaid, that particular road back in 10, and I don't want to drone on and on. But that one was tough because we heard a lot of negatives from that other community. But, we have to take care of our own stuff. We do try to coordinate with other agencies, but sometimes they don't have the budgets. And so that is a challenge in St. Louis County with 90 municipalities, plus we have St. Louis County maintaining their roadway network, and that's challenging. So we do our best to try to coordinate with other communities, but sometimes it doesn't work.
That's where having the pavement management plan and working with those HOAs can really be beneficial. The HOAs can save their money a long way ahead of time to get in on a project like that if they're a private street, and then the other communities can start building that into their budget. So we do that with some private HOAs and University City to the north. We have some streets we share like that we've been fortunate enough to take advantage of by planning in advance.
Brett, you brought up a topic that I was wanting to talk about at the end if I got a chance, but so we have our roads, and we have Jefferson City's streets, and then we also have MoDOT, and sometimes you might go from one to the next to the third and hit 2 or 3 different entities taking care of them. And my goal, and it's going to take a while to get to that point, but I would like to be able to drive down that road and not know which community I'm in or which entity I'm dealing with. If we can coordinate and do treatments at the same time or in conjunction with, I think that goes a long ways to letting the citizens know, hey, you guys aren't just a silo doing your own thing, you're talking to the other ones, and because we're all in this together is the way we look at it. We have a road that we wanted to overlay this year, and pushed it to next year in order to be able to cooperate with Jefferson City because they share part of it. And then a road that they want to do next year, we're going to do as well. So it's those kinds of things. And then anytime our road intersects a MoDOT highway, we don't just stop it where the state maintenance ends. That could leave a void there. So we talk to MoDOT and we communicate that to where we're not leaving some voids that could be easily taken care of if you just had a little forethought in making that decision. Seriously though, sometimes you can't, especially when you get into that operation, you can't coordinate that perfectly, and you just got to do what you got to do. But that mentality goes a long ways to taking care of pavements too. You need to be coordinating, not just doing your own thing, communicate with other entities.
I appreciate you guys coming up. Can we give a round of applause to our panel? All right, thank you.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.